Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. Of course, I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Today, we have another episode in our Entrepreneur Expose series. Of course, our Entrepreneur Expose series is all about having an opportunity to learn from people who have created their own path in life. So we focus on traditional, sort of professional business success for untraditional people. How do you do it? How do you do it when you're not sort of born into a family or a community with a lot of personal connections or wealth or resources? How do you get out there in the world and make things happen? So today, we have an amazing interview. The person who's we're going to be learning from is named John Derr. That's John Derr, and Derr is spelled D-E-R-R. Now, why is he in our Entrepreneur Expose series today? Well, he is the owner and co-founder of a talent agency. It's one of the leading talent agencies in the country, and he specializes in people who work in the television field. So this is exciting. And the agency is named the LornaDave Agency, the LornaDave Agency. And LornaDave is one word, and it's spelled L-O-R-N-A-D-A-V-E, the LornaDave Agency, and the website is LornaDave.com. That's LornaDave.com. So why are we having the fantastic opportunity to have Mr. John Derr join us today in our Entrepreneur Expose? Well, in all disclosure, as I always am as transparent as I can be, I had the pleasure and privilege of meeting Mr. Derr several years ago. In fact, it was about 9 years ago, and it was when I was working very heavily in the television news field, doing multiple shows, sometimes in a week, on Fox, on CNN, HLN, and so I felt like I need an agent. I don't really know exactly this business or what I should be doing. So I reached out, and I was fortunate enough to have Mr. Derr accept me as a client at his agency, and it must be something that works well, because all these years later, we're continuing to work together and explore new opportunities. So full disclosure, John Derr is my talent agent and representative. And, of course, just like in our prior Entrepreneur Expose interview, I try to ensure that I'm bringing guests to the show that are legitimately and authentically, in their actions, someone that we can learn from. And so one of the easiest ways, of course, for me to be able to feel some confidence that these are credible sources is that I have personal experience or relationships. So I want to go ahead at this point. John Derr should be here with us in our studio. I want to go ahead and just welcome him. John, are you there?
I am here, Courtney. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my goodness. This is so exciting. And as I was just sharing in the intro, this is our Entrepreneur Expose series, and that you are someone that our community can really learn from. Now, I think one of the most exciting things about what you do is that you're in television. You're in the entertainment field, and I know for a lot of our community that is part of our show, when we hear agent, it sounds simultaneously incredibly cool. And I sort of think of shows like Entourage and movies where the agent is this, person and they get things done. But it also sounds kind of scary. So can you just maybe tell people a little bit about your agency again? That's the LornaDave Agency, and a little bit about what is your big picture focus as a television agent.
Yeah, I started this company back, 14 years ago now. And my primary focus of the LornaDave Agency is to work with people in television news. So basically, I'm an agent, and I represent people who are news anchors, news reporters, sports anchors, meteorologists, a few producers, hosts, that sort of thing. Over the years, I've branched off a little bit. The main crux of the business is still television news. But I've branched off, and I've gotten what I consider kind of specialty clients. And Courtney Anderson would be one of the specialty clients, people who don't fit the traditional television news role. That's how we met, because you were appearing on network shows. But we've kind of developed different plans for you, from getting you and others like this, PR gigs, and we've been pitching shows for you, and I'm happy to say that we're getting a lot of interest in Courtney Anderson getting her own show. So that's something that we hope we'll be talking about more in the future. But again, the main part of the business is television news, and the reason I started the business back in 2001 is because it's such a very different beast as far as getting jobs. It's not the traditional, you send your resume, you keep calling, that sort of thing. It's very different. I worked in television news for over 20 years as a news anchor and reporter, and I kind of saw that, hey, this is very different in a way of getting jobs, and so I learned how to move up in the business on my own, and helped a lot of people along the way get jobs, because the most important thing in a job search for a television news anchor or reporter is to have a reel, which is basically, back then it was a tape and then a DVD, and now it's basically a link, so it's online, of your work. Because a news director who's doing the hiring wants to see your work, even before they see a resume. The most important thing is I want to see you, I want to hear you, and are you what I'm looking for? And so it's very different, and news directors get hundreds of people applying for jobs, and you can't call them and say, hey, did you see my reel? Do you like me? Can I come in for an interview? You're always told this growing up in most businesses, be persistent, call them, show them you're interested. In this business, you can't. So it's very different.
Well, John, can I just you've touched on so many great things, and I just want to ask you a couple of quick follow-up questions, because I know are excited and want to learn so much from you. One of the things that I think is really important is you shared the concept that it's in this business, in your business of television entertainment, which is just from the outside nothing but glamorous. That it's not a traditional way to get in your foot in the door to get a job, because many people want these jobs. One thing that I shared in our show episode posting was your educational background. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you worked in the industry for a long time, so you know it. You've done this. But my first follow-up question to you would be this. I see here that you have an undergraduate degree. You have a Bachelor of Science in Mass Communications. Yes. Towson University. Now, the fascinating thing is you're in the communication field and you have this degree. We did a show just recently, and it was all about asking, is a degree, right, just a piece of paper? Do you need a degree? And I want to just ask this follow-up and learn, is there any relationship between you going to a formal educational experience and earning your Bachelor of Science degree in Mass Communications and the success you've had in the field? Is there any relationship?
There actually is. In fact, it's very hard to get started in our business unless you've had some journalism classes or mass communication classes, and as part of my mass communication classes, I had journalism. And you need to know those basics. It's really hard to get started in this business unless you have some sort of education in journalism. Again, it doesn't have to be a journalism degree. It can be a mass communications degree. But, when you're on the air, news anchors, yes, they're reading the news, but oftentimes they're proofing scripts and also writing scripts. And as a reporter, you're writing scripts. You need to know some of the rules of the road when it comes to journalism, because stations don't like to get sued. Going to school, I would recommend to anybody, if they wanted to get into television news, you need some sort of background in journalism or mass communications. That's a good place to start.
I really want to thank you, because it's, again, so much of the focus, of course, on this entire, the shows, all the programs I put out, is all about, helping people surpass their goals. But I constantly focus on the idea that it's not who you are, right? But it's what you can do that makes a difference in your professional opportunities. And part of what you can do is either formal or informal education and skills. So that's really important, and I thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important for listeners to understand you didn't wake up one day at 18 years old and you were like, I'm John and I'm fabulous and I'm on TV. That there's a process, and that sometimes I think people see the end result. It's exciting. You see someone on television, and you don't realize the path that the hard work that went into getting them to that point. Which brings me to my second follow-up question. You were talking about this thing and you used a technical term, a somewhat technical term for your industry, and you said that when people want to apply to be on television, specifically in news or hosting, you don't just sort of send off an email off of a job posting on monster.com, but that you ideally have to have what I think you call a reel, which is a little sort of clips of showing that you know how to do this. Not that you just want to do it, not that you feel like you'd be great at it and you're fabulous looking and you're fun, but that you actually have done it. So when you said that not simply having the reel, so not just do you have education in your personal experience and you went and did it so you can have the reel, because if you haven't done it, you don't have anything to show as a reel. You also mentioned that when the hiring entities at these powerful stations and networks see so many reels come in, it's not like you have the reel, boom, you have a job. You started to talk about that it's all about them before they look at even your resume or your experience. They want to see what you do. And I think this also ties into several of the shows and programs we've done, focusing on, again, my contention is it's not sort of who you are, but, again, it's what you can do. So can you talk to our listeners? And I know a lot of people are super excited and have either interest in or maybe some experience in entertainment or television and want to sort of move up. Can you talk a little bit about, as an agent, when you're trying to help them put together their reel, which is what you said were sort of, hey, here's what they do, right? Yep. And you said that that's the first step. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the things that someone who's either in this industry or aspiring would really want to have their reel highlight or focus to get the attention of potential hiring executive?
Yeah, I'll backtrack for a second, just because you alluded to it as well. Is the reel, and I said the reel is the most important thing. Even people just breaking into the business, if you're getting out of college and have never done this, when you're getting out of college, you should have a reel, and your college should be helping you put that together. That should be part of your classes. And when I hear kids getting out of college and they don't have a reel, I'm like, what did you pay all that money for? Because you can't get a job without a reel. You just cannot. I mean, most colleges will have you. It's going to be part of your classes is putting together stories and helping you put together a reel. Even if your college doesn't, you can still get an internship, and some stations will allow you to help to put together some sort of reel. So even though it hasn't aired on television, it still shows you in action. And again, that's the most important thing. No reel, no job. It's not going to happen. And another thing that you talked about was college. And the nice thing about this business is, I mean, there are several schools that are known for producing great journalists. Syracuse, Northwestern, and some others. Too many to name. But the nice thing is, and there are some news directors, if they went to Syracuse, they'll favor somebody who went to Syracuse. But it still comes down to that reel. So if you went to some little small school nobody's ever heard of, and you're better on your reel than somebody who went to Syracuse or another school like that, you're going to get the job. Yes, you might get a better education.
I have to interject. John, this is the core of so much of what we do, what I do in the programs, what we do on the show, what I do when I work with organizations and keynotes. But what I do as a teacher, as a lifelong educator and student, when people share with me that they have failed at a time in life to meet or exceed their goals, so much of this, I always put forward the contention that we have so much more power and opportunity than we perceive that we do. And you just shared a perfect example, and I hope people listening understood what you said. You were sharing that there, of course, are fantastic schools that have reputations and experience, and specifically in these fields, journalism and that type of thing. But you also said something that I wanted to just jump in and emphasize that I think is very powerful, and this is why we do the Entrepreneur Expose series. You were sharing that if someone maybe went to a smaller school or a program that might be newer that a lot of people in the industry aren't familiar with, right, that it still is within their ability, A, to get out there and ensure they have a reel through an internship or whatever they need to do, right, while they're in school or finishing that up. And then you said something that I think is so optimistically uplifting, right, is this idea that, you know what, though, if you have those skills at some level and your skills exceed someone who might have come from a different program with maybe additional resources or mentoring, there will potentially be an opportunity. And I just had to jump in because that is the core of what everything that we do and that we share, and I found that to be uplifting. Can you, as you were sharing, and I jumped in, I was so excited, but can you continue to share with people a little bit about what that real, what is it that you're showing? Do you have great teeth? Do you have nice skin? Do you have great hair? Do you have a wonderful voice?
That's all a part of it.
What are we looking for here?
Yeah, and every reel should start with a montage. And so on that montage, the first thing a news director wants to see when they click on your reel is, what do they look like? What do they sound like? And oftentimes they'll only give it 2 or 3 seconds because they can tell, okay, this person's not qualified for this job. You can tell within a couple seconds. There might be somebody with 2 years experience applying for a major market job, and they're just not ready. And you can tell they still got the deer in the headlights look, so they're not ready for Philadelphia. They click on these reels and don't give it much time. But the montage is usually 45 seconds to a minute, and it's various things. It could be you in a live shot, and it's a bunch of quick clips. And what we call stand-ups. So it's live shots, stand-ups, where you're moving and talking on camera, because they want to see you, they want to hear you, and then they want to see you walk and talk. Can you make an interesting stand-up? Can you do a live shot? That sort of thing. And then after that, you get into what I call the meat and potatoes of the reel. If it's a news anchor reel, then you're going to show some anchoring. If it's a news reporter reel, then you're going to see some reporting. And then if they've gone that far, if they've gotten past the montage and they're still watching, that's a good sign because 95% of the reels they're looking at, they're not getting that far, just because they know this person's not what I'm looking for. They're not ready, or they're not what I'm looking for. May
I just ask a question, sure, John, that I know a lot of people ask me, and I know a lot of people that are listening are curious about. So you're talking about, and you said something about the deer in the headlights look, and we've all watched TV, right? So we know when we watch TV and somebody seems confident and they seem like they know what they're doing and they seem like they're relaxed and it's enjoyable for us. And we also know what it looks like if somebody, maybe we see it a lot on reality TV shows or people who don't have professional experience, they really are just sort of not with the program and it's almost uncomfortable. But I wanted to ask this question. So it's a confidence situation. It's feeling relaxed, conveying through the camera that someone is able to put an audience at ease. But I also want to be very specific. Is it a situation where if someone is a certain size, maybe they're a very small frame person or a larger person, or if someone is a certain color or a certain height, is there some sort of thing where, like being a supermodel, if I'm not a female that's 5'10" or a male that's 6'2", then forget about it? Or is this the type of business that it's not necessarily the package that somebody's in, their size or shape or color or that type of thing, but it's about how they convey their communication skills? What would you say about that?
It's kind of both. Sometimes the hair and teeth part of TV news gets a little too much, but it is TV. You need to, look as your best, but you don't have to be 6'2". You don't have to be a 5'10" model. You can be any shape and size. And I always tell people, get in the best shape of your life because it is TV.
But that's a powerful message. And again, so much of what, the feedback that we have on this show and for all the things I've done around the world working with people, exceeding their personal and professional and business goals, is people self-sabotage. And they think, I can't do this because, and they get in that narrative, and then they're just stuck there. And I think, I don't want to brag or just, and this isn't at all for my own motives, but I just want viewers, listeners, people to understand our community. John Derr is very, very accomplished. He's a very humble person. As I said, I've had the pleasure of working with him for 9 years now, but it's all over the internet. He just very recently, for one of his clients, secured an incredibly impressive deal where, again, he's their agent. So he goes, takes the reel, the things he's talking about, and he negotiates for his clients with people who hire at networks, at television stations. But it's all over the media right now, all over the internet, that he's recently secured for one of his clients a huge network deal on one of the largest and I believe the highest-rated cable channels in the U.S. Now, of course, we're international, but this channel also is in other countries. And my point is simply this, not to sort of brag about how great you are, but the reality is that you do know exactly what you're talking about, and you're able to do very big deals, and that's because of the way I believe that you run your business, which is one of the reasons I wanted to invite you. So for someone of your caliber to explain, first to be on the show, thank you, but to explain to people that it's about your skills. You've got to have the skills, and you're trying to help them understand what skills there are. Now, I would like you to share just a little bit, about what motivated you Because being successful on TV, you already have had your career. You didn't have to go out and start a business. And as we all know, it is hard. It is hard to have a business. I just wanted to know a little bit about, I mean, now all these years later, you're very successful. But what is it that kind of motivated you to start a business? What made you think you could go do this on your own?
I guess just the success I had in helping people get jobs in the business. You know, you're just helping your friends at the station. Oh, here, I'll help you with the reel, and hey, this looks good on the reel, this looks good, because it's so hard to do it on your own. And there's no rules and there's no classes on how to get a job in this business. And you know, I did have several people say, "Wow, you should be an agent. You're you really helped me out." And I dealt with some agents too as talent. So I saw some things I liked. I saw some things I didn't like. So when I started the business, you know, I tried to incorporate obviously the things I liked and, you know, not incorporate the things I didn't like. But I learned on the job. And one of the toughest things about starting this business is you don't get paid. There's no money until you start getting people jobs. So when you're starting it from scratch, I mean, there's no income coming in. So I was still working full time as a news anchor when I started this business. I was a morning anchor, so I was getting up at 3 a.m. every day, working till 12:30, so till just past noon, and then trying to create this business. Luckily, I worked for a station that allowed me to switch to weekends. So I had my two weekend days were during the week, which helped me start my business. And as my business started taking off, they allowed me to start cutting back my hours. I was 5 days a week, and then as I started making money and being more successful, they let me cut back to 4.5 days a week, to 3, to 2, and finally I was just working weekends, and I had 5 days off during the week. And then as the agency continued to be successful and took up a lot of my time, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, I tried to give up the weekend anchoring, and the station was nice enough to say, hey, you do a great job. We appreciate you. The viewers like you. Just come in on weekends and anchor as long as you want. So I stayed in the business for a while, and then even cut down to 1 day a week, until I finally got out. But I loved the news anchoring part of it, but I love running my business, even more. And it got to the point where I needed weekends to myself and my family. Because you put your heart and soul into your business, during the week. So, but it's tough. I mean, some businesses, I would say most businesses are probably like that. Obviously, you're not making a lot of money at first, and it takes time. Yet, if you're trying to work another job so you have money coming in, it's tough. So, I think anybody that started a business has probably felt that. And then the other thing that was so difficult was, I'm sorry, did you want to say something, Courtney?
Well, I wanted to just emphasize something because you're, again, a very humble person, although I must say you're an incredibly efficient business person. I mean, I think the reason you're so successful is, there's no games to what you do. I mean, you get it done. But you mentioned something about, going to a job at, getting up at 3 a.m., working a full job, and then going and running a business and building it. And part of my question would be, first of all, that's a huge sacrifice. And I just wanted to underscore it because so many people that, we talk to on this, on all the programs that we do and everything that I do in the world, people say, oh, I want to fast forward to the end where I'm successful, and it's awesome. But they sort of want to gloss over the hard part where you have to go out and build it from nothing. And so I wanted to first emphasize that you were willing to make that sacrifice, and that's not at all easy. And the second part I wanted to just have you, if you could for a minute, just give us a little insight as we're moving toward the end of our show in a few minutes with you, is how did you have the confidence? I mean, you knew you were good on air. You knew you were good. Your friends said to you, hey, you helped me get my reel together. You were really great. You should maybe be an agent. But a lot of people are told stuff like that by friends. What is it inside of you, or where do you think maybe it came from where you kind of had the extreme confidence in yourself to think, oh, okay, I'm going to risk, maybe, upsetting people at my job by cutting back, and I'm going to go try to take on 2 full-time activities. Where on earth did it come from where you thought you could do this?
Well, luckily I've always been a confident person, so that's never been a problem. And I also have an entrepreneurial spirit. I always wanted to kind of start my own business. It was just a matter of what it was going to be. But then obviously you need a job to support yourself, and it's what I went to school for, so my job ended up turning into my business. So I was lucky in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think in starting any type of business, you need to have that confidence from within, because when I started this, nobody knew the name of my agency. They didn't know who I was, and I'm competing against these big New York agencies who've been around for years. And that's intimidating. But, I felt like I could do it, and I could do it well. And I knew the passion I would put into it and how I would feel to help out my clients. And I still do, these 14 years later. I really put my heart and soul into this business and to my clients' job searches and to their careers, because I basically manage their careers. And it's very gratifying to get them to a point where, they say to you, hey, you made my dreams come true. Thank you so much. And that makes it all worth it. But I really think if you really put your heart and soul into something, it'll give you that confidence. And then you put your heart and soul into it, and you'll develop a good reputation. And that's, my business has developed a good reputation because, I work my butt off for my clients. I really care, and I'm very picky about who I sign. So we've got a very good reputation for, representing really good journalists, and that's kind of the key.
I would because this is so powerful what you said about your own journey, about the sacrifices, about you had the confidence, and obviously even when there had to be times when you were frightened or scared and deep inside thought this thing may fail, but you just kept going. But my bigger issue is that you sort of toward the end we're talking about, of course, now you're all these years into it and you have this great reputation, you're doing these huge big deals, financially it's successful, you have a great family, ability to support yourself, you have a wonderful reputation, but part of the thing that I think is incredibly fascinating that I really want you to take us a little bit here toward the end of our program and address, how much would you attribute to just plain old luck versus how much do you attribute to where you are today, to the fact that you went and learned formally the skills you needed, had the education, worked in the business, learned it, built up your skill set, started off working, job at 3 a.m. and then did that. How much of it is luck, and how much of it is the fact that you were saying toward the end that you put your heart into it, that you're picky about finding the right clients, that you are constantly focused on reputation. So how much of it is just, hey, I got a lottery ticket and got lucky, and how much of it do you attribute to, you get up on time, you're self-disciplined, you're organized, you return phone calls, you're on top of your calendar, you follow through, you create trust, all the soft skills, and then, of course, your content base. So is it 80% luck and 20%, hard work, or where would you put that? Because I think it's one of the core things in everything that we teach and everything that we do on the show is trying to combat this idea that, hey, some people get lucky, and there's nothing you can do. So how much of it is luck and how much of it do you think is just sort of a consequence of the choices and the work and everything that you put into it?
I would almost say that I think 0% of it's been luck, and that's not. It might sound cocky, but I in this business, it's all about what you do, and it's hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, and rolling up your sleeves and doing it. Whether it's on the air as an anchor or reporter, and again, all those years of myself in the business trained me for what I'm doing now and starting my business. But I don't get clients through luck. I get them because of the reputation I built up.
Wow.
So I think you just roll up your sleeves and work hard, and try and make your dreams come true.
Well, we're coming up here on our last less than 2 minutes, and I first of all, I'm giddy and excited. And first I want to, of course, obviously thank you for the time. You are extremely busy, and I do want people to understand that, as I said, I've been a client for a long time, and I always feel sometimes guilty on the phone because I can just sort of hear, the urgency, and I know I think I have an idea of how much, is on your plate, and you are an incredibly hard worker. But you took the time to be part of this program, and you didn't have to, and I appreciate that, so thank you. And then the second thing that I really... I learned so much about, you. I mean, I of course know about your success professionally, but I didn't know some of these specific sacrifices that you made and some of the challenges. And I also want to share with our community as we're moving to wrap up here in a few minutes, is that you are so proud of not just your professional success, but also your family. So often you mention, I'm going on vacation and or something, and you always sound so happy about that. So as we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody, part of what I do is this whole idea of the joyful art of business, and it's not a joke. I really mean that, and I think John Derr with the LornaDave Agency, LornaDave.com, is a perfect example of that. And what he was sharing at the end there, and saying it's about hard work and what you do, not who you are, not where you come from, is. And I didn't know he was going to say that, but it ties into everything that we share. It's about what we do that we can have some impact on our lives, and we can change things, and it's not just something where we just have to sit and wait to be lucky. So, John, I want to thank you again for joining us as we wrap up again. Always, people can come to CourtneyAnderson.com